The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Commander Vexithara stood at the center, her blue skin still bearing scars that even the best medical technology could not heal. The assembled representatives from 47 different species watched her with careful eyes. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. The council speaker, a tall being with 6 arms and golden skin, raised one hand for attention. Commander Vexithara of the Krillian Defense Force, you stand before us today to give testimony about the recent conflict between the Zephyrian Empire and the humans. Your words will help us decide if humanity should remain in our galactic community. Vexithara nodded slowly. Her throat felt dry. 3 cycles had passed since the war ended, but the memories still felt fresh. Every night she dreamed of explosions, screaming, and the strange sounds humans made when they fought. Honorable Council, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I know why you called me here. You have heard stories about human savagery, about their refusal to follow proper rules of war, about how they fight like wild animals instead of civilized beings. Murmurs spread through the hall. The representative from the Altarian Republic, a creature that looked like a giant insect, clicked its mandibles nervously. Indeed, Commander. We have received disturbing reports. Humans who refuse to surrender when clearly defeated, soldiers who continue fighting even when wounded, tactics that no civilized species would use. Vexithara's scarred hand tightened into a fist. Yes, I have seen all of these things. But before you judge humanity, you must know the truth about what really happened on Kepler 442b. The council speaker leaned forward. Please tell us everything. Vexithara closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. When she opened them again, they were hard as steel. 6 months before the war ended, I was part of a joint task force. Representatives from 12 different species, all military advisors. Our mission was simple. Observe human military tactics and teach them proper rules of engagement. She paused, looking around the hall. We believed the reports we had received, that humans were new to galactic warfare and needed guidance, that their methods were crude and ineffective. The Zephyrian Empire had assured us this would be a short conflict. They said humans would surrender quickly once they understood how real war worked. A representative from the hegemony of Voss, a species known for their logical minds, spoke up. The Zephyrians are the most advanced military power in our galaxy. Their strategies have been studied and admired for centuries. Surely they were correct. Vexithara's expression darkened. That is what we all believed. The Zephyrians had fought 12 major wars in the last 2 centuries. They always won quickly and cleanly. Their enemies would surrender after a few battles, accepting defeat with honor. It was civilized. It was how war was supposed to work. She began to pace slowly, her boots echoing in the silent hall. When I arrived at the staging area near Kepler 442b, I met with General Zephyr Khan, the Zephyrian commander. He was confident. He told me the human resistance would collapse within days. He said they had already destroyed several human colonies and that the remaining humans would see reason. The clicking of mandibles grew louder from the insect representative. Destroyed colonies? That seems harsh. I thought so too, Vexithara replied. But General Zephyr Khan explained that some colonies had refused evacuation orders. He said they had been processed. For the safety of all, I accepted this explanation. After all, the Zephyrians were experienced in these matters. She stopped pacing and faced the council directly. I was assigned to observe a human outpost designated as Firebase Echo. Intelligence suggested it would be one of the last holdouts. The Zephyrians planned to demonstrate proper siege warfare, expecting the humans to surrender once they realized their position was hopeless. The council speaker made a note on his datapad. And what did you observe when you arrived? Vexithara's voice grew quiet. Nothing like what we expected. The human base was built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by rough terrain. It looked primitive compared to Zephyrian fortress designs. No energy shields, no advanced defensive systems, just metal walls and weapon emplacements that seemed almost ancient. She touched one of her scars unconsciously. General Zephyr Khan was pleased. He said it would be over quickly. His forces surrounded the base and demanded surrender according to standard galactic protocols. The response we received, what was their response? Asked the Voss representative. They laughed, Vexithara said simply. Not the laugh of beings who found something funny. It was something else, something that made my skin crawl. Then a human voice came over the communication channel. The accent was strange, hard to understand, but the message was clear. Come and take it. Silence fell over the hall again. Several representatives exchanged worried glances. Vexithara continued. General Zephyrkon was insulted. In all his experience, no enemy had ever refused a proper surrender demand. He ordered his forces to begin bombardment, expecting the humans to reconsider once they saw Zephyrian firepower. She laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. The humans did not reconsider. Instead, they began shooting back, but not in any way we recognized. They did not line up in formation. They did not follow standard defensive patterns. They moved like predators hunting in packs. The representative from the peaceful Confederation of Worlds, a gentle species that had not fought a war in over 1,000 years, spoke nervously. Surely this was just inexperience. New species often make tactical mistakes. I thought so too, Vexthara admitted, until I saw what happened next. A group of Zephyrian soldiers managed to breach the outer wall. According to all military doctrine, the humans should have fallen back to secondary positions and prepared for organized retreat. Instead, she paused, her voice catching slightly. Instead, they did something no civilized being would do. They charged. Not in formation, not with proper support, but like wild creatures protecting their young. They threw themselves at trained Zephyrian soldiers with weapons that should have been useless at close range. The hall erupted in murmurs of disbelief and disgust. But that is not the worst part, Vexithara said, her voice cutting through the noise. The worst part was that it worked. These supposedly primitive humans, using crude tactics and inferior weapons, drove back some of the finest soldiers in the galaxy. And they did it by fighting in ways that went against everything we thought we knew about warfare. The council speaker raised his hand for silence. Commander, these tactics you describe, they sound barbaric. Surely you cannot be suggesting we should approve of such behavior. Vexithara looked directly at him, her eyes blazing. Honorable Speaker, I am suggesting nothing yet. I'm simply telling you what I observed. Because what I saw in the days that followed changed everything I believed about war, about civilization, and about what it truly means to fight for something worth protecting. She turned to address the entire assembly. You asked me here to tell you about human savagery. You want to know if they are too dangerous to remain in our galactic community. I will tell you everything. But I warn you now, the truth is not what any of us expected. And when you hear it all, you may find that the real question is not whether humanity belongs among us. The hall was completely silent now, every representative hanging on her words. The real question, Vexthara concluded, is whether we are worthy to stand beside them. The first time Vexithara saw humans fight up close, she thought she was watching madness. It was the third day of the siege at Firebase Echo, and nothing was going according to Zephyrian plans. She stood next to General Zephyrkon in the command post, watching displays that showed the battle in real time. The general's confidence from the first day was gone. His elegant features were twisted with frustration and something that looked like fear. This is impossible, he muttered, staring at the tactical display. They should have surrendered by now. We have destroyed their outer defenses. Their supply lines are cut. They have no hope of reinforcement. Vexthara studied the screen. Red dots showed Zephyrian forces surrounding the human base. Blue dots showed the human defenders. By all logic, the humans should have given up. They were outnumbered 3-1. Their equipment was clearly inferior. They had no way to escape, but the blue dots kept moving. And Zephyrian red dots kept disappearing. Perhaps they do not understand proper surrender protocols, suggested Commander Reith, a reptilian officer from the Scaled Alliance. New species sometimes have cultural barriers to logical thinking. General Zephyrkon nodded eagerly. Yes, that must be it. We should send another communication explaining the benefits of honorable surrender. Vexithara said nothing, but she had been watching the human radio chatter. Her translation device picked up fragments of conversation. The humans understood surrender perfectly well. They simply chose not to. The communication officer, a young Zephyrian with nervous eyes, looked up from his station. Sir, I am receiving a response to our surrender offer. Excellent, the general said. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was rough and tired, but completely calm. Zephyrian Command, this is Major Chen of the 42nd Colonial Defense. We've received your offer. Our response is the same as yesterday and the day before. Come and take it. The communication ended with a sound that made several officers flinch. It was laughter, but not the kind that indicated amusement. It was the sound a predator might make before attacking. General Zephyr Khan's face darkened. This is intolerable. They mock civilized protocol very well. If they will not accept honorable defeat, we will demonstrate why surrender is the logical choice. He turned to his tactical officer. Order the assault teams to advance. Show these primitives what real soldiers can do. Vexithara watched through her observation scope as Zephyrian troops moved forward in perfect formation. They advanced in textbook style, using proper cover and maintaining communication discipline. It was beautiful to watch, like a deadly dance performed by masters. The human response was immediate and terrifying. Where Zephyrian soldiers moved in organized lines, humans appeared from nowhere. They came from holes in the ground, from behind rocks that seemed too small to hide anyone, from directions that made no tactical sense. They moved like wild animals, but with frightening intelligence. Contact left, shouted a Zephyrian squad leader over the radio. Multiple targets moving fast. Contact front, came another voice. What are they doing? Vexithara adjusted her scope and saw what the soldier meant. A group of humans was charging directly at a Zephyrian heavy weapons position. This was suicide by any reasonable standard. Heavy weapons could cut down infantry at long range with ease, but these humans were not moving like normal infantry. They scattered and regrouped like a pack of hunting beasts. When one fell, the others did not retreat or take cover. They became more aggressive, as if the injury to their packmate had made them angry. Impossible, breathed Commander Reith. Civilized beings do not fight harder when taking casualties. They should be demoralized. But the humans were not demoralized. A wounded human soldier, his arm clearly broken, was still shooting with his good hand, while two others dragged him to safety. Instead of leaving him behind as a tactical liability, they risked their own lives to save him. Why? Vexithara found herself asking. Why do they not follow logical doctrine? The answer came sooner than she expected. The heavy weapons position that had seemed so secure was suddenly silent. Somehow impossibly, the charging humans had reached it. The radio crackled with confused Zephyrian voices. Firebase 7 is not responding. Repeat, Firebase 7 is silent. Visual contact shows human forces in control of the position. How did they get through the kill zone? General Zephyr Khan was staring at the tactical display as if it showed something from a nightmare. This cannot be happening. They used no advanced tactics. No sophisticated equipment. How did they overcome a prepared position? Vexithara had been wondering the same thing. She switched her scope to replay mode and watched the assault again in slow motion. What she saw made her stomach feel cold. The humans had not overcome the position through superior firepower or clever tactics. They had done it through something far more disturbing. They had simply refused to die when they should have. A normal soldier, when faced with overwhelming firepower, would take cover and wait for support. These humans had kept moving forward even when wounded. They accepted casualties that would break the morale of any civilized force, and they used those casualties as motivation to fight harder. Sir, the communication officer called out, his voice shaking. I am receiving a transmission from the human base. Put it through, the general ordered. The same calm voice came through the speakers. Zephyrian Command, this is Major Chen. We have recovered some of your wounded soldiers. They are receiving medical treatment. Would you like us to return them? The silence in the command post was complete. In all of galactic history, no enemy had ever offered to return wounded soldiers during active combat. It violated every principle of warfare. General Zephyr Khan found his voice first. This is a trick. What do they want in return? Nothing, came the reply. Your soldiers are hurt. We fix hurt soldiers. It is what we do. Commander Reith's reptilian features showed complete confusion. I do not understand. What strategic advantage do they gain from healing enemy wounded? Before anyone could answer, another human voice came over the radio. This one was younger with a different accent. Command, this is Corman Martinez. The alien soldiers we recovered are in pretty bad shape, but they'll live. One of them keeps asking why we are helping him. I told him it's because he's hurt and we're medics. I don't think he understands. Vexithara felt something cold settle in her chest. She had studied military doctrine from dozens of species. Never had she encountered soldiers who treated enemy wounded as if they were their own people. This is a waste of medical supplies, General Zephyr Khan declared. They should be focusing on their own casualties. This proves they are not thinking strategically. But Vexithera was not so sure. She watched as a human medic ran across open ground under enemy fire to reach a wounded Zephyrian soldier. The medic was clearly visible to human snipers who could have easily shot the Zephyrian. Instead, they provided covering fire to protect both the medic and the enemy soldier. "General," she said slowly, "I request permission to observe human operations more closely." Zephyr Khan waved dismissively. "If you wish. Perhaps close observation will help you understand their primitive thinking." As Vexithera prepared to move forward, she heard the human radio chatter again. They were discussing tactical positions, casualty reports, and supply levels. But mixed in with the military talk was something else. Jokes, personal questions about families back home. Promises to watch out for each other. These humans fought like a family defending their home, not like professional soldiers following orders. And that realization made Vexithera more afraid than all their strange tactics combined. Because families, she knew, did not surrender until everyone was dead. On the 5th day of the siege, everything changed. Vexithera woke to the sound of explosions much closer than they should have been. She rolled out of her sleeping unit and grabbed her equipment, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The command post was in chaos. Officers ran back and forth shouting orders while communication screens flashed with emergency signals. General Zephyr Khan stood in the center of it all, his usually perfect uniform wrinkled and stained. "Report," Vexithera called to the nearest officer. "Human counterattack," the young Zephyrian gasped. "They broke through our eastern perimeter 2 hours ago. We have lost contact with 3 forward positions." Vexithera felt her blood turn cold. "Counterattack? How is that possible? They are surrounded." Commander Reith appeared at her side, his scales pale with shock. "It seems we underestimated their capabilities. They did not simply break through our lines, they came from underground. Underground? Tunnels," General Zephyr Khan said grimly, joining their conversation. "They spent the last 4 days digging tunnels while we watched their surface positions. They moved troops and supplies right under our sensors." Vexithera stared at him. "But our ground-penetrating scanners should have detected any excavation." "Should have, yes. But humans apparently do not use normal digging equipment. They used simple tools and moved small amounts of dirt at a time. The scanners dismissed it as natural ground settling." A communication officer called out urgently, "Sir, Forward Command Post Delta is requesting immediate evacuation. They are cut off and under heavy assault." General Zephyr Khan studied the tactical display. "Impossible. Delta is 15 kilometers from the human base. How did they—" He stopped speaking as the reality hit him. The humans had not just broken out of their surrounded position. They had somehow moved behind Zephyrian lines and were now attacking the attackers. "All units fall back to secondary positions," the general ordered. "We need to regroup and assess the situation." But even as he gave the order, more reports came in. Human forces were appearing in places they should not exist. Supply convoys were being hit by soldiers who seemed to materialize from empty air. Communication lines were being cut by enemies who knew exactly where to strike. "How do they know our position so well?" Commander Reith asked, his voice tight with frustration. The answer came from an unexpected source. A wounded Zephyrian soldier was brought into the command post, supported by 2 medics. His armor was damaged and his face was pale, but his eyes were alert. "Sergeant Vithos reporting, sir," he said weakly. "What happened to your unit, Sergeant?" General Zephyr Khan demanded. The soldier's voice shook slightly. "Sir, we were overrun by human forces. But before that happened, they offered us surrender." Complete silence fell over the command post. "They what?" the general whispered. "The humans contacted us on our emergency frequency." A female voice, very polite. "She said they had us surrounded and offered to accept our surrender. She promised we would be treated according to the Galactic Conventions for prisoners of war." General Zephyr Khan's face went through several different expressions. "And what did you do?" "We refused, of course, sir. We are Zephyrian soldiers. We do not surrender to primitives. Then how are you here?" Sergeant Vithos looked confused. "The humans. They kept their word anyway, sir. When they overran our position, they could have killed us all. Instead, they captured us and provided medical treatment. Then they released us with a message." What message?" "That they have food and medical supplies available for any Zephyrian soldiers who need them. No strings attached. They said—" He paused, looking embarrassed. "They said war should not prevent beings from taking care of each other." Commander Reith made a sound that might have been laughter or a cry of distress. This is insane. They release enemy soldiers who might give away their positions? No, sir, the sergeant said. They blindfolded us before release, and they moved us to a completely different location. We have no idea where their forces actually are. Vexthara felt a strange sensation in her chest. She had been observing warfare for many years, but she had never encountered anything like this. These humans fought with deadly efficiency, but they also showed mercy to enemies who had shown them none. Sir, the communication officer called out again, I have a human transmission coming in on the general frequency. Put it through, the general said grimly. The voice that came through the speakers was the same calm tone they had heard before. Zephyrian Command, this is Major Chen. We have several of your wounded soldiers here. We also have hot food and medical supplies. If you want to send medics to collect your people, we can arrange a temporary ceasefire. General Zephyrkhan stared at the speaker as if it had grown teeth. This is not how war works. But even as he spoke, Vexthara could see the doubt in his eyes. Everything about this conflict had gone wrong. The Zephyrians were supposed to be the masters of warfare. They had superior numbers, better equipment, and centuries of experience. Yet somehow they were being outfought by beings who treated their enemies with kindness. General, Vexthara said quietly, perhaps we should accept their offer. Our wounded need treatment. Accept help from the enemy? Commander Reith hissed. It is unthinkable. But the general was looking at the casualty reports. His forces had taken heavy losses and more wounded were coming in every hour. The humans were offering professional medical care with no conditions attached. Very well, he said finally. Arrange the ceasefire. But I want observers present. Find out what these humans are really planning. An hour later, Vexthara found herself walking toward Firebase Echo under a white flag of truce. The human base looked different now. What had seemed primitive before now looked clever. The walls were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. The placement of weapons took advantage of natural terrain features. But what struck her most was the humans themselves. As she approached the main gate, she could see soldiers working to repair damage from the siege. They moved with purpose and efficiency, but they also talked and laughed with each other. Some were sharing food. Others were helping wounded comrades with simple tasks. The gate opened and a human figure approached. Major Chen was smaller than Vexthara had expected, with short dark hair and tired eyes. But when she spoke, her voice carried quiet authority. Commander Vexthara, I presume. Thank you for coming. Your wounded soldiers are this way. As they walked through the base, Vexthara saw something that made her stop in shock. Human medics were treating both human and Zephyrian wounded in the same medical tent. They used the same supplies, showed the same care, and followed the same procedures regardless of species. Why? Vexthara asked. Major Chen looked at her with genuine confusion. Why what? Why do you treat our soldiers as well as your own? We are your enemies. The human was quiet for a moment. You know, that's the second time someone has asked me that today. The answer is simple. They are hurt. We are medics. That is what we do. Vexthara stared at the human major. In all her years of military service, she had never met an enemy who spoke about compassion as if it were a basic fact of existence. But surely you understand the strategic disadvantage of helping your enemies. Major Chen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Commander, we understand strategy very well. We also understand that the moment we stop caring about the wounded, we become something worse than our enemies. As they reached the medical tent, Vexthara heard something that made her heart skip. A Zephyrian soldier was thanking a human medic for saving his life. The medic was saying it was no problem, and asking if the soldier needed anything else. For the first time since arriving at Kepler 442b, Vexthara began to wonder if the Zephyrians were fighting the wrong war against the wrong enemy. 3 days after the ceasefire, Vexthara received a message that changed everything she thought she knew about the war. She was in the temporary medical facility that humans and Zephyrians had set up together when a young human soldier approached her. Commander Vexthara, Major Chen wants to see you. She says it's important. Vexthara followed the soldier through the base. She had been staying here while her own wounded recovered, and the experience had been unsettling. Humans treated her not as an enemy observer, but as a fellow soldier who happened to wear a different uniform. She found Major Chen in a small office, staring at a datapad with an expression that looked like disgust and anger. "Commander, thank you for coming. Please sit down." Vexithera took the offered chair. "Is there a problem with the medical arrangements?" "No, the medical side is working perfectly. Your soldiers and mine are healing well." Major Chen set down the datapad and looked directly at Vexithera. "I wanted to show you something, but I warn you it's disturbing." She activated a wall screen and gestured for Vexithera to watch. This footage was recovered from a Zephyrian data core that we captured 3 weeks ago. We've been trying to verify its authenticity. The screen showed what looked like a Zephyrian processing facility. Vexithera recognized the architecture and equipment. But something was wrong with the scene. There were too many beings moving around, and they did not look like Zephyrian soldiers. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Colony Ship 7, Major Chen said quietly. "One of our civilian evacuation vessels. It carried 15,000 people, mostly families with children." Vexithera felt her skin grow cold. Colony Ship 7 was reported destroyed in battle. Watch. The screen showed the ship docking at a Zephyrian facility. Civilians were being led off in organized groups. They looked confused but not frightened. Zephyrian officers were speaking to them, apparently explaining procedures. "Standard processing," Vexithera said, though something in her voice sounded uncertain. "Temporary holding until relocation facilities are prepared." Major Chen said nothing but advanced the recording. Now the screen showed the same civilians being divided into different groups. Adults in one area, children in another. Elderly and sick individuals were separated into a third group. "This is normal procedure for refugee processing," Vexithera said, but her words came out as a whisper. "Keep watching." The recording jumped forward in time. The area where the elderly and sick had been taken was now empty. The children's section had fewer occupants, and the adults were being led away in small groups that did not return. Vexithera's hands began to shake. This cannot be what it looks like." Major Chen paused the recording. "Commander, I need you to understand something. We have recovered 17 similar recordings from different locations. This is not an isolated incident. The screen changed to show a different location. More human civilians, more processing groups, more disappearances. Then another location, and another." "How many?" Vexithera asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. 43 colonies. Nearly 2 million people." Major Chen's voice was carefully controlled, but Vexithera could hear the anger underneath. "Your General Zephyr Khan has been very efficient." Vexithera stood up abruptly, her chair falling backward. "No, this is not possible. The Zephyrian Empire follows galactic conventions. We do not harm civilians. Sit down, Commander, please." Vexithera slowly picked up her chair and sat back down. Her mind was reeling. Everything she had been told about the war, about human resistance, about Zephyrian objectives was crumbling around her. Major Chen activated another recording. This one showed a communication between Zephyrian Command and a processing facility. "Status report on human colony designation 7th Alpha," came a voice that Vexithera recognized as General Zephyr Khan. "Processing complete, sir. No survivors to report. Excellent. Prepare the facility for the next shipment. Colony designation 12 Beta should arrive within 2 days." The recording ended in silence. Vexithera sat motionless for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible.
"Why are you showing me this?"
"Because you need to understand what we are really fighting for." Major Chen leaned forward. "Commander, we did not refuse surrender because we are savage. We refused because we know what Zephyrian surrender means. But the Galactic Conventions assume that all species value life. They assume that prisoners of war will be treated with basic dignity. They assume that civilians will be protected." Major Chen's voice grew harder. "Those assumptions do not apply when your enemy sees you as vermin to be exterminated." Vexithera thought about all the reports she had heard. Zephyrian officers describing human colonies as processed for security reasons. Casualty reports that never mentioned civilian survivors. Efficient military operations that left no one behind to cause future problems. "How long have you known?" she asked. "We figured it out after the first 3 colonies went dark. We sent scout ships to investigate. They found empty buildings and mass graves." Major Chen stood up and walked to the window. "That was 8 months ago. Since then, we have been fighting for the survival of our entire species." The pieces fell into place in Vexithera's mind. Human desperation. their refusal to follow normal rules of engagement, their willingness to accept massive casualties rather than surrender. It all made terrible sense, but why did no one in the galactic community know? Major Chen turned back to face her. Because the Zephyrian Empire is very good at information control. They reported our colonies as military targets that were destroyed in battle. The galactic press reported Zephyrian victories against human military installations. She activated the screen again, showing news reports from galactic media. Headlines praised Zephyrian efficiency and military precision. Editorials discussed the importance of bringing human aggression under control. The galaxy thinks we are the monsters, Major Chen said. They think we fight dirty because we are primitive and savage. They have no idea that we fight desperately because we are facing extinction. Vexthara felt sick. What about the other species? The observers like me? You were sent to monitor our tactics, not investigate our motivation. General Zephyr Khan made sure you only saw what he wanted you to see. A terrible thought occurred to Vexthara. Commander, the wounded Zephyrian soldiers that you treated and released. Did you tell them about these recordings? Major Chen nodded. We tried. Most of them refused to believe us. They said it was human propaganda designed to justify our war crimes. And the others? A few asked to see the evidence. When we showed them, Major Chen paused. They asked to speak with their families back home. Vexthara understood. Those soldiers had realized that they were fighting for an empire that committed genocide while claiming to spread civilization. Major Chen, she said carefully. Why are you telling me this? How do you know I will not simply report that humans are spreading lies about the Zephyrian Empire? The human smiled sadly. Because you have been here for a week. You have seen how we treat prisoners, how we care for our wounded, how we share our food with former enemies. You know we are not monsters, she was right. Vexthara had seen things that no propaganda could fake. Human soldiers sharing their personal rations with hungry Zephyrian prisoners. Medics working 18-hour shifts to save lives regardless of species. Officers making tactical decisions that put enemy welfare above military advantage. There is one more thing, Major Chen said quietly. Something that might interest you personally. What? 3 of the colonies that were processed. They were not human colonies. Vexthara felt her world stop spinning. What do you mean? Colony designations 15 Gamma 23 Delta and 31 Echo were settlements belonging to the Altarian Republic, the Scaled Alliance, and the Krillian Defense Force. Mixed civilian populations that happened to be in human space when the war started. The screen showed new recordings. Vexthara saw beings that looked like Commander Reith being led away in processing groups. She saw Altarian civilians being separated from their children. She saw Krillian families that looked like her own neighbors being loaded into transport ships that never reached their supposed destinations. My people, she whispered. Your people, our allies, anyone who was inconvenient to Zephyrian expansion. Major Chen sat back down. Commander, this war was never about human aggression or primitive tactics. It was about one empire's decision to remove any species that might interfere with their plans. Vexthara stared at the screen, watching her own people disappear into Zephyrian processing facilities. Everything she had believed about the war, about civilization, about right and wrong, was not just mistaken. It was completely backwards. The humans were not the monsters. They were the only ones trying to stop the real monsters. Back in the council chambers, Vexthara reached into her uniform and pulled out a data storage device. The assembled representatives leaned forward, sensing that something important was about to happen. Honorable Council, she said, her voice steady and clear, I have shown you recordings of what the Zephyrian Empire called civilian processing. I have evidence of systematic genocide disguised as military operations. But you need to understand the complete truth about what happened after I learned these facts. She inserted the device into the chamber's main display system. What I am about to show you was recorded 6 days ago, during the final battle of the war. The screen lit up with scenes of Firebase Echo under heavy bombardment. But this was different from the earlier footage. The attacking forces were much larger, and they were not just Zephyrian. Ships and soldiers from multiple species filled the display. When word leaked about our investigation into Zephyrian processing centers, General Zephyr Khan convinced several species that humans were spreading propaganda to justify their savage tactics. A joint task force was assembled to end human resistance once and for all. The council speaker looked confused, but the war ended with human victory. How is this possible? Vexthara smiled grimly. Watch and see. The recording showed the massive Allied fleet surrounding the human base. General Zephyr Khan's voice came through the speakers, transmitted on all frequencies. Human defenders, you are completely surrounded by the combined forces of 7 galactic species. You have no hope of escape or victory. Surrender immediately or face total destruction. The response from Major Chen was broadcast just as widely. General Zephyr Khan, we have received your ultimatum. Before we respond, we want the entire galaxy to see something. The screen split to show a different view. Human ships were approaching the Allied fleet, but they were not in attack formation. Instead, they were broadcasting on emergency frequencies. All ships, all stations, this is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We are transmitting evidence of genocide committed by the Zephyrian Empire. Please examine this data before taking any hostile action. Vexithara paused the recording. Council members, what happened next changed everything. The humans did not defend themselves by fighting. They defended themselves by telling the truth. She advanced the recording. The screen now showed communication channels lighting up across the Allied fleet. Ships from different species were receiving and analyzing the genocide evidence in real time. I was monitoring Krillian communications when our commanders received proof that 3 of our colonies had been destroyed by Zephyrian forces. Vexthara continued. The reaction was immediate. The recording showed Krillian ships breaking formation and moving away from the attack fleet. Their commander's voice came through clearly. Krillian forces are withdrawing from this operation. We do not make war alongside genocidal regimes. Within minutes, ships from the Scaled Alliance followed. Then the Altarian Republic. Then 3 other species that had lost colonies to Zephyrian processing. General Zephyr Khan's voice became increasingly desperate. This is propaganda. Lies designed to break our alliance. Do not be deceived by human trickery. But the evidence was overwhelming. Hour after hour of recordings, authenticated communication logs and witness testimony from their own people. The Allied fleet fell apart as species after species realized they had been manipulated into supporting genocide. By the end of the day, Vexithara said, only Zephyrian forces remained. They were outnumbered 50-1 by humans and their new allies. The screen showed the final surrender. General Zephyr Khan's forces laying down their weapons as ships from 6 different species surrounded them. But what happened next surprised everyone watching. Major Chen's voice came through the speakers one final time. General Zephyr Khan, your forces are ordered to surrender for processing under Galactic war crimes protocols. However, we want to make something clear to your soldiers. The human fleet moved into formation around the Zephyrian ships, but not as captors. They formed a protective circle. Attention Zephyrian personnel, you are not responsible for the crimes of your leaders. You will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war. Any soldier who provides information about remaining processing facilities will be granted immunity and assistance in relocating their families. Vexes. Thara stopped the recording and looked around the council chamber. Many representatives were staring at the screen in shock. In the 3 cycles since the war ended, she continued, humans have led the effort to shut down 17 remaining processing facilities. They have rescued over 50,000 civilians from 6 different species. They have provided food, medical care, and transportation to refugees regardless of which species they belong to. The representative from the Altarian Republic clicked his mandibles nervously. Commander, are you saying that humanity fought this war to protect other species, not just themselves? I am saying more than that, Vexithara replied. I am saying that humans fought this war the way they did because they refused to become like their enemies. They could have used chemical weapons. They could have targeted civilian populations. They could have fought genocide with genocide. She gestured to the data device. Instead, they chose to fight in a way that preserved their humanity. Yes, they broke the civilized rules of warfare, but they did it while maintaining civilized values that the rest of us had forgotten. The council speaker leaned back in his chair. Commander Vexithara, you have given us much to consider. But I must ask directly, do you believe humanity should remain in our galactic community? Vexithara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of everything she had witnessed. Honorable Speaker, distinguished representatives, I have seen humanity at war. I have seen them face extinction with courage, treat enemies with mercy, and refused to abandon their values even when doing so would be easier. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from every species present. But more importantly, I have seen what happens when civilized species follow civilized rules while evil acts freely. For centuries, we have fought wars like gentlemen's duels while genocide happened in the shadows. We followed proper protocols while entire populations disappeared. The hall was completely silent now. Humanity taught us that sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is refuse to be civilized. Sometimes protecting innocence requires breaking rules that were written to protect the guilty. She straightened to attention. I do not believe humanity should remain in our galactic community. I believe our galactic community should strive to become worthy of humanity. The representative from the Peaceful Confederation spoke in a trembling voice. But, Commander, if we abandon civilized warfare, what separates us from animals? Vexithara smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. The answer to that question was given to me by a human medic who spent 18 hours straight saving the life of a Zephyrian soldier who had been trying to kill her friends. She paused, remembering. I asked her why she worked so hard to save an enemy. She said, "The moment we stop caring about the wounded, we become something worse than our enemies." That is what separates civilized beings from animals. Not the rules we follow, but the values we refuse to abandon. Vexithara looked directly at the council speaker. Honorable Speaker, I survived humanity's battlefield. I learned that the most terrifying enemy is not someone who fights without rules. It is someone who follows the rules while committing atrocities. She gathered her data device and prepared to leave. Humanity does not fight like civilized species because they understand something we forgot. Sometimes the most important battle is not the one for territory or resources. Sometimes the most important battle is the one for the right to remain decent beings in an indecent universe. As she walked toward the exit, her final words echoed through the silent chamber. I pray that when our species face that battle, we will have the courage to fight it like humans. The great hall remained silent long after Vexithara had gone. The representatives sat motionless, each one thinking about the choice between civilization and decency, between following rules and protecting lives. Outside the chamber, Vexithara looked up at the stars and thought about the human base where former enemies still shared meals and told jokes while working together to rebuild a war-torn world. She smiled and began planning her next mission, helping to establish new protocols for preventing genocide, with input from the species that had learned the hardest way possible that some fights are worth having.